Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. I'm Linda. We're reading through a vintage cookbook from 1917. It's called A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband, and I have a reprint from Dover Publications here that I'm reading from. Now, we've been reading this book since June. It goes through an entire year starting in June because it is also an instructional novel, and there's a storyline following the first year of married life for a fictional bride named Bettina and her husband Bob. We are starting the month of November with this reading, so we'll be in chapters 78 and 79. And there's a poem to start each new month. So the poem for November is Cozy fire a burning bright, cozy tables robed in white, dainty dishes smoking hot, home and cold and snow forgot. And there's also some illustrations with the beginning of a new month. So there you can see Bob and Bettina sitting by their fireplace. Chapter 78, A Foretaste of Winter. Say, but it's cold today, called Bob at the door. Frost tonight, all right. I was glad I took my overcoat this morning. Have you had a fire all day? Yes, indeed, said Bettina, and I've spent most of the afternoon cleaning my furs with cornmeal and fixing those new comforters for the sleeping porch and putting away some of the summer clothing. I believe we will need those new comforters tonight. How are you fixing them? I was basting a white cheesecloth edge about 12 inches wide along the width that goes at the head of the bed, you know. It's so easy to rip off and wash, and I like to have all the comforters fixed that way. I was cleaning my old furs, too, to cut them up. I'm planning to have a fur edge on my suit this winter. I don't believe you'll know the furs, the suit, or Bettina when you see the combination we will make together. Fur is the thing this year, you know. Couldn't you spare me a little to transform my overcoat? I'd like to look different, too. Silly. Come along to the kitchen. There's beefsteak tonight. Won't it taste good? And I want you to cook it while I'm getting the other things on the table. I didn't expect you quite so soon. That night for dinner they had beefsteak, creamed potatoes, deviled tomatoes, rolls, butter, plum sauce, and Bettina's drop cookies. And in this chapter we have Bettina's recipes for creamed potatoes, deviled tomatoes, drop cookies. And we'll discuss those after we read the next chapter. Chapter 79, Surprising Alice and Harry. We knew you'd be here, and we've come to surprise you, shouted Bob, Fred, Bettina, and Ruth as they opened the door of the new apartment, which was to be the home of Alice and Harry. We've brought the party with us, and they held out several bulging baskets. Welcome, smiled Alice delightedly as she stepped down from the box on which she was standing to hang a soft, silky curtain. Harry, tall and silent, rose, hammer in hand, from the crate he was opening, and welcomed each one in turn. Bob and I came to be chaperones if you needed us, said Bettina, putting on a prim and disapproving look, as different as possible from her usual happy expression. Oh, my dear, exclaimed Alice's mother in a shocked tone. Surely you didn't imagine, but then, of course you didn't, because you would naturally know that I would be here. Alice laughed her ringing laugh. Mother is too literal for any use, Bettina. And Alice's absent-minded father looked up from the newspaper he was reading to ask what the joke was. The joke, father dear, said Alice, is that your foolish daughter should be about to marry this solemn and serious youth. And she turned Harry around by the shoulders till he faced her father. But perhaps you hadn't heard about the wedding, father. Now, don't tell me you had forgotten. Forgotten? Forgotten your wedding, Alice? Said her mother, astonished. Of course your father hasn't forgotten. Why, only yesterday he was saying that the cost of a trousseau apparently hadn't lessened since Lillian was married. Weren't you, father? It was when your new green corduroy came home, Alice, and I was saying... But Alice had led the girls off to show them over the apartment. Father had retired behind his newspaper, and Harry was showing Fred and Bob his own private den, whither he might retire from the worries of domestic life. Only, observed Fred sagaciously, since it opens off the living room, you can't retire very far. I predict that married life will make you rather a sociable person, Harry. Harry shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. Old bear, cried Alice, entering the room at this point. You don't need to be a sociable person. I like you just as you are. And she turned to the others. Come to the party, please. It's all in the kitchen. We've made coffee, too, and everything is beautiful. I love surprises. The party consisted of apples, popcorn balls, nut cookies, maple fudge, and coffee. And we do this time have the recipes for popcorn balls, which were made by Bob in another chapter earlier, and we didn't have his recipe, so we have a recipe this time. And we have nut cookies, and we have maple fudge. All right, so join me in just a second, and we will discuss these recipes and the stories. All right, are you ready to discuss chapters 78 and 79? Well, it was kind of interesting. The weather's changing, and so there's the fireplace in use, and Bettina spent her day cleaning her furs with cornmeal. Isn't that weird? I don't know about that. I imagine cornmeal maybe is an absorptive product, and she's going to line she's going to not line her coat, but like put a fur collar. She calls it a fur edge. She says, I'm planning to have a fur edge on my suit this winter. Fur is a thing this year, you know. And I did find a vintage pattern that I happen to have at home for a young girl's coat. And you can see that it has this one has a fake fur collar on it. And it is somewhat in the era of, this pattern is somewhat in the era that we're talking about in the book. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. You'll notice the cuffs also seem to be fur. And she said her suit, so I'm not quite sure that she means her coat, because this is a coat in the pattern. But that's just fun to see and think about. Now, she's using some real furs and reusing them, and you know, it's quite popular right now. You can see a lot of YouTube videos about repurposing your clothing and changing, you know, one piece of clothing into something else. Like I've seen men's button-up shirts changed into little girls' dresses and so forth. And you can also just change your own clothing for yourself. I've seen some videos where people are modifying their clothes for the seasons too, cutting things down for summer or things like that. So she's into that, or she's before her time, isn't she? No, I think we're just getting back to that kind of thing is what it is, truly. She's also done something interesting. You know how in your bed sheets, the top sheet, the edge of it seems to get soiled the easiest, maybe because it's rubbing on your face and gets the skin oils on it more than the other parts of the sheets do. Well, Bettina's trying to protect her comforters along that upper edge, and she sews a little bit of cloth over the edge of her comforter, and she's just basting it. So that basting is large stitches, large loose stitches by hand. And she's putting along there to hold that cloth on the edge. And that way she can just wash those cloth edges rather than the whole comforter. I imagine doing laundry in 1917 would not have been quite as easy as it is for us today. All right, so those were the fun things from this chapter. Bob, of course, joking that he wanted fur on his coat also. Now the recipe is creamed potatoes. That is made with 1 cup diced cooked tomatoes. I'm sorry, potatoes. The next recipe is tomatoes. All right, the creamed potatoes. 1 cup of diced cooked potatoes. 1 teaspoon green pepper. No, 1 tablespoon green pepper chopped fine. 1 tablespoon butter. 1 tablespoon flour. 1/2 cup milk. 1/4 teaspoon salt. Melt the butter, add the flour and salt, mix well, and add the milk slowly. Cook until creamy. There she is making her white sauce again. And add the potatoes and the chopped green pepper. Serve very hot. Now this next recipe was intriguing to me. I wonder what you'll think of it. Deviled tomatoes. Have you ever heard of such a thing? And what makes them deviled? I'm thinking about deviled eggs, where we take the yolk and we mix in some mayonnaise, and some people use cream cheese, and then you put it back in the hard-boiled egg, and that's called a deviled egg. But these are deviled tomatoes. So I think deviling maybe has something to do with the stirring up, the mushing and stirring up, the mixing up of something. Well, the deviled tomatoes are for 2 portions, so you use 2 tomatoes, 1 for each person. And you're going to peel the tomatoes and cut them in half and sprinkle them with 2 tablespoons of flour. Then you're going to place a tablespoon of lard in a frying pan, and when it's hot, you're going to add the tomatoes and brown them nicely on both sides, and then sprinkle with 1/8 teaspoon of salt. So that's the first step. When brown, place on a hot platter and pour over them the following sauce. For the sauce, you're going to have these ingredients: 1 tablespoon butter, 1 tablespoon sugar, 1/2 teaspoon mustard. Surely I think that's the dry mustard powder. 1/8 teaspoon salt, a pinch of paprika, her favorite spice, right? 1 hard cooked egg, 1/2 teaspoon flour, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and 1 tablespoon of water. Okay, so now the directions for the sauce. Place the butter in a pan, add the sugar, mustard, salt, and paprika, the egg cut fine, and the flour. Mix well, add the vinegar and water. Heat, allow to boil 1 minute, and then pour over the tomatoes. If the sauce seems too thick when it has boiled 1 minute, add a little more water. Okay. So that sounds very different. I am tempted to try that one. Now for the drop cookies. This makes 24 cookies. 1/3 a cup of butter, 1 cup sugar, 1 egg, 1/2 cup sour milk, probably buttermilk, 1/2 teaspoon soda, baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 1/4 cup chopped raisins, 2.5 cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. All right, so these drop cookies are a raisin cookie, aren't they? You're going to cream the butter, add the sugar, then the whole egg. Mix well, add the sour milk and the vanilla. Mix the baking powder, soda, and flour well. Add the raisins and add to the first mixture. Beat well. Drop from a spoonful to a buttered and floured pan, leaving 3 inches between the cookies. Bake 15 minutes in a moderate oven. Remember, a moderate oven is about 325 to 350. All right. Now, chapter 79, Surprising Alice and Harry. I have something else to show you for this one, too, that I pulled out from our things we have. These ones are from my husband's family. Just kind of old things that we have from back in the day when some of his grandparents had collected things. But I just wanted to show you. So Alice's father is chaperoning her, as well as her mother is also, because Alice and her fiance Harry are fixing up their apartment that they're going to move into once they get married. So once the wedding happens, they'll move in together as husband and wife and live in an apartment. So Alice is there hanging a curtain, and Harry was opening a crate. So there's something that came in a wooden crate, and he has a hammer. He's opening the crate. We don't really see that much anymore, do we? And her being Alice's parents are both there, as I said, chaperoning, because it's an unmarried couple in an apartment by themselves. So things have changed. And the father, what's he doing while he's, hanging out, is he's reading the newspaper. And I just wanted to show you, because we don't see that many newspapers anymore. But this is a newspaper from 1915. And you can see how very large it is. It's very large, and it opens up to twice that size, of course. So you can imagine Alice's dad putting the paper down and saying, "What was that? What did I miss? What was the joke?" So, yep. So again, this is a newspaper from February 20th of 1915. That was a Saturday. Looking to see what things were being talked about. Oh, there was an article here, A Quiet Marriage. Mrs. Conrad and Mr. Peterson were quietly married at the home of the bride's parents. The ceremony was performed under an arch of palm leaves. The color scheme of white and green was carried throughout the house. The bride was attired in white crepe de chine and lace and carried a bridal bouquet of white lilies. After the ceremony, a sumptuous four-course dinner was served. Only the immediate friends of the bride's family and Mrs. Sager were present. Mr. and Mrs. August Peterson left Thursday morning for an extended wedding trip, visiting the San Francisco Fair and also that at San Diego. They will be at home to their friends after April 1 on the groom's farm near Pipestone, Minnesota. The community joins in heartfelt congratulations. Isn't that fun? It is just tickles me to read the old newspaper accounts. There was just so much grace to them. All right. And it seemed more personable, didn't it? So that's what's going on there. And Alice and Harry are in their apartment when Bob, Fred, and Bettina and Ruth show up with baskets full of treats. They're going to have some apples and popcorn balls and some nut cookies and some maple fudge and drink some coffee and just spend some time together. Now the popcorn balls, this makes eight balls. It's 3/4 a cup of light brown or sea sugar, 3/4 a cup of white sugar, 1/2 a cup of molasses, 1/2 a cup of water, 2 tablespoons of butter, 1/4 a teaspoon soda, which would be baking soda, 2 quarts of freshly popped corn, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Place in a saucepan the sugar, molasses, water, vinegar, and butter. Cook without stirring until the candy forms a hard ball which clicks against the side of the glass when dropped into cold water. So you prepare a glass of cold water and you drop a little bit of it in and you see if it's ready, if it's finished cooking, it will change inside that cold water. It will click against the side of the glass when it's dropped in. Add the soda, stir well, and pour over the corn, which has been salted and placed in a large pan. Mix the syrup thoroughly with the corn, and when partially cooled, moisten the hands and press the corn into balls of uniform size. Popcorn balls should be kept in a cool place. All right, that is fun. And then nut cookies, 3 dozen cookies. These were made with 1/3 cup butter and lard mixed, 2/3 cup sea sugar, which we know is light brown sugar, 1 egg, 4 tablespoons of milk, 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/3 a cup of chopped nut meats, preferably black walnuts, 1 teaspoon of powdered cinnamon, 1/4 a teaspoon of powdered cloves, 1/4 a teaspoon of mace, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And they're made in the usual way, and they're rolled into 1/4 of an inch thick and cut with a cookie cutter, then placed on a well-buttered and floured baking sheet, baked for 12 minutes in a moderate oven. And then we have the recipe for maple fudge, and they had a wonderful night. So I'm thinking it would be so fun to have friends drop by like that. Don't you think so? Maybe that's something you can plan to surprise some friends with, a party like that. All right. Until next time, God bless your home.